Guys, in this audio clip, I want to talk about projection. Now, listen up. I'm not going to bore you guys with, psychological, sociological, nor anthropological theories because I'm dealing with reality. And when I make videos like this, I'm talking about real things of reality. So forget about all those theories. Let me just talk to you about projection, okay? Projection is when an individual or a group projects danger or any other attribute. It can also be a positive attribute, but they project it upon another object. You know, for example, you have someone who's lazy, but they don't want to face themselves and acknowledge the reality that they are lazy. So they try to find signs of laziness in other people and blame others for their laziness. And sometimes they would just declare someone lazy without any basis in reality. So a projection doesn't always have to do with a real fact. Projection often happens when an individual doesn't want to deal with an issue in his or her own life, and he or she projects it on someone else. Upon they victimize someone by placing the guilt and the responsibility upon someone else. Okay. Well, while I was young, with young, I mean, you know, beginning of my teenage years, because I'm just 22, I'm still young, but when I was just a kid, I believed that, you know, projection, I didn't know what to call it back then, but now I know it's projection. I believe that projection was something rare among human beings, and that people only project things in dangerous circumstances. For example, during World War II, if you had Jews in your home that were hiding, you might have lied towards the Nazi officers, and you would have put the whole blame upon the circumstance, or you would have, how do I say it? Projection is a form of lying, and you put the responsibility completely with someone else. Well, in the case of you're hiding people in your house that are persecuted, it's your responsibility, your choice to receive them. But you put the blame on someone else that's making the threat. You see, I thought that only in such circumstances people would project. Well, guys, I was totally wrong. Projection, as I found out and experienced in life, is a common trait among human beings. It's a common trait among singers, and unfortunately also among Christians. You see, and projection often happens when people feel threatened. You see, because, basically, let me just say it. It's when people feel threatened, when their illusion of reality is threatened, then they begin to project. Let's just, you know, go to the Bible for a moment. Wait, I'll search the verse here. Go to the book of Genesis. No, not Genesis. Go to Exodus. We start at the beginning. As you know, Joseph became the prime minister of Egypt, and at the age of 30, at the age of 39, he was reunited with his family, the Hebrews, and from then on, the Hebrews also dwelt in Egypt. And Joseph remained the vice king, the prime minister of Egypt, for about 8 years, because he was 110 when he died, and people mummified him and laid his coffin in Egypt, I believe somewhere in a pyramid. However, during that 8 years, the Hebrews multiplied enormously, and also the years after, the death of, Joseph and those other and his brothers, and the Hebrews became very important to the Egyptian economy. Because remember, Egypt was the world empire at the time. The same as the United States is today. Egypt was the center of power in politics and economics and also culturally. So when the Hebrews multiplied in Egypt, they began to inhabit big portions of the Egyptian economy and therefore also the world economics. And they were also influential, so they also gained political influence. Now think about this. The ancient Egyptians didn't worship Yahweh, they didn't worship the Lord. They worshipped demon spirits, those false Egyptian gods. So they, projected the wealth of Egypt to those false gods. And Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, was seen as a god figure. Yes, he was a human being. Well, not all of them were human beings, some of them were Nephilim, but anyway, the Pharaoh was seen as a god figure. And whenever Pharaoh died, he was mummified and he entered into a new state of existence. That was the myth that that was taught during ancient Egypt. And so you get the picture. You have the Hebrew people and the ancient Egyptians. They both are dark-skinned black people. The Hebrews, you know, they began to multiply more than the Egyptians. So the circumstance became that you had more Hebrews in Egypt than Egyptians themselves. Now remember, Egypt was the world's power at the time. They had dominance over all the other nations and cultures of the world. Yet their country had more Hebrews than Egyptians. Now I'm going to read. I'm in Exodus at the moment. And yes, I'll read from verse 7. And the children of Israel were fruitful and increased abundantly and multiplied and waxed exceedingly mightily, and the land was filled with them. Stop. So you see now, they were everywhere in Egypt. They occupied every part of the economy, of politics, of social roles. They were there. Okay, so you couldn't, dismiss them. Yes, they were Hebrews, but you couldn't distinguish them from Egyptians because they had the same color. Okay? Yet, let's continue. Verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph. Now, let's look at this carefully. Joseph was the prime minister of Egypt for 80 years. Under several pharaohs. It was under the same pharaoh. So there were pharaohs that came and went. But Joseph remained for 80 years. And in those 80 years, the Hebrews increased exceedingly. So Joseph died, and Joseph died, the brothers of Joseph were also dead. Jacob was dead a long, long time ago, and so yet the new generations, they just had their home in Egypt. So, but now, not immediately after Joseph died, but for example, maybe 100 years or 120 years, the Bible doesn't say exactly. Well, there came a time that there was a new political dynasty in Egypt. And this dynasty, this new king, this new pharaoh, wasn't familiar with Joseph. You see, he didn't feel any connection with Joseph nor the Hebrews. And listen up what was following. Verse 9. And he said unto his people, that means the Egyptians, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more mightier than we. So you see, this king saw how mighty the Hebrews were, that they were mightier than the Egyptians. So this king realized, just as the other Egyptians realized, that it wasn't really the Egyptian empire that impacted the world, it were the children of Israel, it were the Hebrews. Remember, it was Joseph's wisdom that made, you know, the treasury of Egypt full with gold, silver, and other riches during the 7 years of famine that the Lord brought upon the whole earth. And the Hebrews now were so mighty and so influential that they were really the ones, holding the Egyptian empire. So they were really the ones impacting the world, not the Egyptians. So this reality alone destroyed the whole illusion of Egyptian mythology. Now let's continue. So this Pharaoh began to speak with his people, so the Hebrews were excluded. They weren't considered as one of them. And you have to realize this. In the world, you only have unity by exclusion. Okay? Unity of inclusion is non-existent in the world. You can only be included in a group in the world if you have similar, you know, interests and similar visible, expressions. See, that's how groups are formed. On the visual and intellectual level, there must be similarities, and that's how groups are formed. And everyone who does not, match the standard is seen as an outsider and a threat. That's how politics work, and that's how social, economic structures work in this world by exclusion. So the Egyptians excluded the Hebrews, even though they were born in Egypt. Let's look further. So this is what the Pharaoh said. Verse 10. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Oh, so you get the picture here. The Pharaoh was scared. He walked in fear. He was thinking if the Egyptian empire would ever be challenged by another nation, because remember, in the world with power structures there will always be challenges and wars. Okay, and now Egypt was the dominant world empire. Upon Asia, the Americas, Europe, Africa, they were dominant. Okay, so if Egypt would be challenged by war, the Hebrews could easily end Egyptian reign, either by joining the enemy or setting up their own empire. This possibility, this potential was seen by the Pharaoh and also by the Egyptian people. So I want to pause for a moment. If you realize in this history, the enemies of the Hebrews were the people of God. Now listen up, dear brothers and sisters in Christ Jesus. Your enemies often know better what you're capable of than you know yourself. You see, the Hebrews didn't realize their potential. They were just dwelling in the land of Egypt and, making themselves at home and, contributing to Egyptian society. And Egypt had high technology, they had electricity, you also had those ancient airplanes and you also had dinosaurs that were used for chariots. So Egypt was a high civilized society at that time. You know, it wasn't that far from the modern day society. And the Hebrews had an enormous role in maintaining that Egyptian empire, but they didn't realize their impact upon Egypt, neither their impact upon the world. But the Egyptians did notice it, so did the leader of the Egyptians. So your enemies will often be more aware of your potential than you are. And that's not a good sign, guys. So let's keep on listening. Let's keep reading. Therefore they did set over them taskmaster to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Israel. Now, you see here the Pharaoh now made clear to his people that the Hebrews were a threat to them. And so they began to oppress the children of Israel. How did they begin to oppress them? By just going out and shooting them, killing them, slaughter them? No. This is how they did it. They came with tasks to afflict them with burdens. Now, pay attention to this. Pharaoh, who became the enemy of the Hebrews, of the children of Israel, he didn't came with, the sword. He came with tasks. Remember, Egypt was the world's was the dominant empire in the world. So they also had relationships with other countries, okay? So the system needed to be sustained, and Hebrews contributed to the system. And when you're in a society, you're expected to contribute to society. So Pharaoh was saying that the Hebrews need to contribute more to Egypt. And that was logical, so the Hebrews accepted it. But what the Hebrews didn't realize realize at the time that it was a trap. Before the Hebrews realized, they were ensnared in slavery. Yet, despite that, they continued to grow. And the Egyptians realized that, they are being ensnared by, burdens. Their freedom is taken away from them. They're in slavery, but still they are growing, they are multiplying. So they became scared, frightened by the Hebrews. Now listen further, verse 13. And Egyptians made the children of Israel to serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All the service wherein they made them serve was with rigor. Okay, so you get idea there. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of one was Sifra, and the name of the other Puah. And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men, children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives, and said unto them, why have you done this thing, and have saved the men, children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because Hebrew women are not as Egyptian women, for they are lively, and are delivered ere to the midwives came unto them. Therefore God dealt with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mightily. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared God, that he made them houses. And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born shall cast into the river, and every daughter you shall save alive. So listen here. Pharaoh knew that men are the foundation of a society. It's the men that keep society together, that bring structure in a society, in a group. The men are leaders in a culture. So if you want to destroy a culture, if you want to destroy a people, you need to destroy the culture. And you destroy the culture by attacking the men. You see? That's psychology. So Pharaoh decided if there are less male role models for the Hebrews, then they are forced to take Egyptian male role models. So let's attack the men already when they are children, so that they won't be a threat to the Egyptian empire. So you see here, first there are burdens being placed upon them, then it's hard slavery, and afterwards it's murder. It's a pattern. But if you look at his history, what's more, how let's say it, strange is that not one time did the Hebrews revolt nor make any attempts to overthrow the Egyptian culture. They contributed to Egypt, and they lived in Egypt, but they never showed any form of threat to Egypt. Yet, the Egyptians saw that it was possible for them to do so, and they would be successful if they did it. So, the Egyptians projected danger upon the Hebrews, upon the children of Israel. And by doing this, they began to see them as an enemy and began to maltreat them and abuse them to feel good about themselves. Now, I've put the picture of, Hitler as the, front of this audio clip. The reason I did it is because, that's similar to what Hitler did during his Nazi reign. You see, he projected danger upon certain groups, and the people agreed with him, and that's how the Nazi oppression began, which led to the death of millions of people. Now, those groups within Germany were not the majority, as it was in ancient Egypt, yet there are similarities. And if you look carefully, every tyrant, every dictator does the same thing. They use the projection of the people and they project danger upon certain group. They scapegoat groups, and that's how, ethnic violence and civil wars begin. Okay? Now, what does this has to do with your personal life? Let me say it clearly. There will be people that will project danger on you. Okay? It doesn't mean that you're dangerous. You see? It can be that you're not dangerous at all. It can be that you mean no harm at all to those people, but they will project danger on you, whether or not there's a basis for reality. You see, the case with, the ancient Hebrews in ancient Egypt was that, yes, they were, in the majority, there were more Hebrews than Egyptians. So physically, it was possible that they would turn against Egyptians and they would take over, or that they would join the enemies of Egypt. It was possible physically, yet there was no further evidence in reality that they were planning nor aiming to do that. But their enemies, the Egyptians, didn't look at the situation with, clear eyes. They were biased in their way they viewed reality. Their focus was themselves, how to, have a good life themselves. And if you want to have a good life for yourself, then everyone who may be a danger to that good life is automatically an enemy. And this thing is more striking. The Lord promised Abraham that his seed would be a blessing to all nations on earth, to all families of the earth. And look at this. The Hebrews at that time were contributing to the world's economy. So what God spoke through Abraham for 300 years earlier, it came to pass. Already, the seed, Christ, didn't came yet. However, the Hebrew people that God already brought forth out of Abraham through his son Isaac and his grandson Jacob, they were already a blessing to humanity. Yet the Egyptians did not focus upon the Lord nor upon his righteousness. They were focused upon self-gratification, upon the here and now, upon having a good time, about feeling secure. You see? And that's why, because they didn't have, God in their mind, they didn't see God's plan. That the presence of the Hebrews were a blessing to them. That it was for their benefit that the Hebrews were there in Egypt. And that's why, listen, some people will be blind to the blessing that you are in their lives. Therefore, some people will be ungrateful and show ingratitude towards you because they cannot see God's plan in their lives by placing you in their lives. And therefore, when you have such people, you should depart from them. Okay? I mean it. Just depart from them. Just leave them alone. You are better off without them. You know, and let's, learn another lesson from this history. If you have to stay somewhere temporarily, don't make the temporal your home. Because listen, the physical children of Israel, they were promised the country Canaan by the Lord. The Lord promised Canaan to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that their descendants will live there. So their descendants at the time were living in Egypt, in where they were the majority. However, the goal was that they would live in Canaan. So the children of Israel should have had the attitude, okay, we are in Egypt now as a people, but we shouldn't remain here. We should work to get out of here. But they made Egypt their home. And that's what many people do that gets them into trouble. You should never make the temporal your home. Don't preserve the temporal, because the place you are where you are for a while is not where you are meant to stay. You see, and that's what God will often do in your life. The Lord will bring you to places in your life only for a season, and when the season is done, you should move on and leave that place behind. But in today's society, there's a big emphasis on settling, having a comfort zone, avoiding all risks and all dangers in life. So people often take something that's temporal and make it permanent in their lives, and they are, you know, how do I say it? They become indignated, and they feel it kind of strange when their lives go wrong and they become depressed. Listen, what's temporal should remain temporal because it will pass by. Never remain longer in a setting than necessary, because you know it would have been better for the Hebrews to move out of Egypt after Joseph died, because they were preserved and they did multiply and became a people, a nation. So they should have left Egypt with the remains of Joseph when Joseph died and go towards Canaan and settle over there. They should not have remained in Egypt after Joseph died. You see? And that's it. You see, God will bring some Josephs in your life. God will bring people like Joseph in your life that will be a blessing to you, even though those people may not know you. But when those people move on, you have to move on too. And I see this happen often, and I'm only 22 now. I didn't live for 80 or 110 years. But what I do already see is that many people just don't want to move on. They just want to hang on in what's comfortable. They want to hang on in the past. If you have people in your life who don't want to move on, you move on. You leave them behind. I mean it, guys. Listen, it's attitudes like this that made, Nazi Germany possible. It's attitudes like that make, all oppressions and all genocides that happen in human history possible. Because people remain in the old, they remain in the past. They hold on to things they should have let go long, long time ago. And there's another catch here. If you don't move on with your life, you won't be able to deal with reality. You won't be able to, you know, face, when things go wrong. Because one of the contributing factors that led to World War II and the Nazi Empire was sexual molestation and sexual abuse of children during the late 19th century and beginning 20th century in Germany and Austria. That led to many, adults growing up with, to many children growing up and becoming adults with psychological problems. And those psychological problems were then later also transferred to their children. And so before knew it, you had millions of people with psychological issues. And those psychological issues led to anger. And that's what Hitler used. He redirected the anger that the people felt towards their parents and their grandparents, towards society in general, that didn't, stand up against child abuse that they've gone through. And Hitler used that anger and projected the danger upon other groups. And that's why Nazism became so powerful. It wasn't because of economics, it was because of projection. You see, when you are somewhere at a place and people project danger onto you, you know, there comes a time that you just have to leave. You just have to give up and move to another place. Sometimes you need to move to another place and begin all over again. You see, the Lord didn't promise that life here will be easy and a pleasant rhythm. He did make sure to warn us that we will go through persecution. However, it all will be worth it because He's with us all the days till the end of the world. Well, I hope this video has opened your eyes, and may the grace of the Lord Jesus be with you.